Hello and welcome to Commander's Tech, Weapons and Warfare in Context. In this show, we answer the hows and whys of conventional and unconventional weapons with an eye towards how they were used on the battlefields of the past and towards how they could be used on the battlefields of the future. In this episode, we seek to answer a question that often comes up when studying the Pacific campaigns of World War II. I recently visited the Community World War II Museum in Conneaut, Ohio. If you're passing through Conneaut, it's worth stopping by to see what they have in their collection, but don't expect to spend a day there. While I was there, I got into a conversation with the docent on infantry weapons in World War II. He posed a question to me that, by interesting serendipity, I had actually been thinking about quite a bit lately myself. Specifically, why were Japanese weapons during the war seemingly so primitive compared to American? For this inaugural episode of Commander's Tech, we'll explore this question and its answers. When exploring the weapons of World War II, regardless of country, it's important to remember that while it was a time of rapid technological change, World War I had only been 20 years earlier. World War I sparked massive changes in weapons and technology and tactics, but it also bankrupted the world, and different countries experienced the war in different ways. Japan was a belligerent power in the war, but being in the Far East, was not involved in the trench warfare of France and Belgium. Instead, their principal experience in the war was for the Japanese Navy to engage the German Navy in the Pacific, as well as occupying and taking control over the German colonies in East Asia. During the 1890s and through World War I, Japan modernized their military, adopting bolt-action rifles and machine guns that were best of breed at the time of their adoption. During the interwar period, Japan fought wars on the Asian mainland against Russia and China, principally fighting campaigns against the Chinese Nationalist Party under General Chiang Kai-shek, known as the Kuomintang. The armies of the Kuomintang were armed somewhat haphazardly. Against these opponents, the Japanese wouldn't have perceived much of a need to upgrade their equipment. In fact, during the Second Sino-Japanese War, both sides were armed principally with World War I-era equipment. By the start of World War II, no country had truly upgraded their infantry weapons. Even the U.S., with the famed M1 Garand and M1 carbine, was still mostly using World War I vintage 1903 Springfield rifles and 1917 Browning .30 caliber machine guns, with their forward-deployed units, such as the Marine contingent on Wake Island or the Army units stationed in the Philippines. With the exception of some minor updates, Germany, the Soviet Union, Italy, the UK, and France were still using World War I-era rifles and machine guns, so in this regard, Japan was certainly not unusual. First adopted in 1897, the Arisaka is a Japanese indigenous design, although clearly influenced by the Mauser and Carcano rifles. Prior to the war, the most common Arisaka was the Type 38 in 6.5 by 50 mm. The Type 38 long rifle was quite long at 50.2 inches, making it unwieldy for the smaller Japanese soldiers, but it is an accurate and dependable rifle. The Type 38 carbine is much smaller and handier, although it wasn't as common. Just prior to the war, the Type 99 rifle was adopted in a new caliber, 7.7 by 58. The version of the Type 99 first adopted had many non-essential features, including anti-aircraft sights and a folding monopod. As the war progressed, these features were steadily discarded, and the Type 99 transitioned into a simpler design. The original 6.5mm cartridge was a little underpowered for the time, but the later 7.7mm is comparable to a .303, and not that far from a 30-06. As the war progressed, the Type 99 saw a sequence of production-simplifying changes, leading to the last-ditch or substitute standard rifles. The simplified design looks primitive, but it's still the Type 99 and still effective. This is not completely different from the late-war production exigencies of Nazi weapons, or even the transition from the 1903 to the 1903 A3 during the war. All models of the Arisaka rifle except the Type 44, the folding bayonet carbine, can mount the Type 30 bayonet, and Japanese battle doctrine called for heavy use of bayonets and edged weapons. Handguns are a weapon of last resort. Like everything else, the Japanese adopted decent designs when they were new, and they remained committed to them. The Type 26 revolver, apart from being double action only, is comparable to other ordnance revolvers from the period, such as the Lebel 1892 or the Nagant 1895. Designed by Keiichiro Nambu, the Type 14 was the standard issue sidearm for Japanese officers. It fires the 8x22mm Nambu cartridge, which was somewhat weak compared to 9mm or 45 ACP. The Nambu pistols are similar to the Italian Glicenti pistols of World War I, as well as the German Luger. These were early designs and did not hold up well in actual combat. Of course, the impact of that is limited, as the purpose of the combat handgun is to get you to a new rifle. Seven. Japanese light machine guns were actually excellent, although the Type 11 is a little strange, fed from a hopper of Arisaka stripper clips. The Type 11 light machine gun uses the same 6.5mm cartridge as the Type 38 Arisaka, with a quick-change barrel and a Hotchkiss-derived feed system. It is loaded using 6 5-round Arisaka stripper clips, ejecting the spent clips along with the casings. It was adopted after World War I and used widely in the interwar period, being phased out from frontline service but still seeing much action by the time of the Second World War. The later Type 96 and Type 99 light machine guns are comparable to the Bren gun and actually more useful than the closest U.S. analog, the BAR. These Japanese guns were fed from 30-round box magazines and featured a quick-change barrel for rapid barrel changes during sustained fire. The Type 96 remains in the 6.5mm cartridge of the Type 38 Arisaka, but uses a Bren-style top-feeding box magazine and offset sights. The Type 99 is in the more potent 7.7mm, but is otherwise similar to the Type 96. The Type 99, with its high rate of fire and potent ammo, has been identified as one of the best light machine guns of the war. Japanese heavy machine guns, on the other hand, show evidence of being committed to an obsolete design. The Type 3 and Type 92 are copies of the Hotchkiss machine gun, which was considered one of the best prior to World War I, but didn't quite fare as well in actual combat. Many countries, including France and the United States, used Hotchkiss guns. The first U.S. Army adopted machine gun was the M1909, which was a Hotchkiss design. But with the weight and the feed strip system, the Hotchkiss was unwieldy and unreliable. The Japanese guns had all of these problems, yet they persisted using them through the war. The Type 3 used the same 6.5mm cartridge as the Type 38 Arisaka, but the Type 92 used a 7.7mm cartridge that was actually not the same as that used by the Type 99 Arisaka. This created logistic problems for the Army that already had logistics problems, fighting campaigns on islands across a vast ocean. Of course, the other big deficiency was the general lack of Japanese submachine guns. Again, they adopted a copy of what was the best of breed at the time, but obsolete when it actually came into service. The Type 100 is an MP28 or MP34 copy in 8mm Nambu. As a result, it was heavy, a bit unwieldy, and underpowered. And they didn't see the use for them, so they never made very many. The Japanese were not alone in this mistake. The British did nearly the same thing, not seeing the use for submachine guns during the interwar years. After Dunkirk, the British bought all the Thompsons they could get, while rapidly designing and producing their own copies of the MP28, the Lanchester and the Sten. Japanese weapons were comparable to those of other major powers in World War II, but they may not have learned all the lessons of World War I, the lessons of the trenches, and they remained committed to some designs that may have, in part, failed the test of the trenches. Many of these older designs were perfectly satisfactory when they were facing the Chinese Kuomintang, who were similarly armed. so there was pressure to upgrade was limited. Second, the Japanese, while they were an industrialized power in the 1930s, had less experience with modern manufacturing than some of the other nations in the world. As a result, they had less capacity to keep up with the losses of a major war. As a result, as the war progressed, they were forced to return to traditional cottage industry with a corresponding decline in quality and consistency. Thus, we see the Type 99 Arisakas, or the Type 99 last-ditch Arisakas. As an additional note, where do all these stories of inferior and dangerous enemy weapons come from? Well, for the most part, this comes from wartime propaganda. Telling a soldier that enemy Arisaka or Carcano is inferior junk, more dangerous to the shooter than to his target, is valuable if you need that soldier to charge up a hill or to take an enemy bunker. Not quite so useful to tell the truth that the Type 99 Arisaka has the strongest action of any bolt-action rifle used in the war, or that those Japanese light machine guns are, in some regards, superior to the Browning automatic rifle.